Well, after another week of action, we are down to just one team now undefeated in the MVC, and that's Sparta.
Yep. I still think it's going to be a dogfight. I mean, I think the top 4 or 5 teams are all so close. You might have a tie at the conference at the end of the season, 4 weeks from now. It's going to be interesting to see what happens because all those teams still have to play. Many of them have to play each other, and the quality at the top is pretty good.
And there's a way that if things play out the way that they could play out this week, we could be looking at 5 3-1 teams in the MVC.
Yeah.
Well, area meetings in the WIAA were taking place last week, and an ago, discussion was brought up in terms of the very early start time. August 1st this year, equipment was handed out. We're looking at a July start date in the years to come. And this kind of got things we're talking about districts again and all these issues coming up.
Well, I think that is kind of a concern, actually, the early start date. We were saying, 2018, they're talking, in July to start. And, I mean, the summer, the kids still have to have some summer. I mean, we have to kind of respect that part of it, and I think it makes it difficult participation-wise. They get tugged. Families want to go on vacation, and the early start date cuts into that. I went through the district plan just as an explanation. What they're trying to do is deal with the disparity in size of different schools in the conferences. And we have a real highlighted one here. Aquinas is at about 300, and Holman is probably 1,000 kids bigger. So what they would do is they would form football-only conferences.
Which Minnesota is
doing, right. And so you would play schools, your size. There are some particular problems in football that I think have to be addressed. One is just the disparity in size. You might be forced to play kids before they are ready. A 14 or 15-year-old boy against an 18-year-old boy. That's a big physical and mental disparity between the two of them. So I think that certainly can be a problem and needs to be addressed. And secondly, all other sports are all play to get into the tournament series except for football. You have to win half of your conference games in order to qualify for the football playoff series. So, you want to have some sort of an even playing field for those. So anyway, the district plan went through about 8 or 9 years ago. 95% of the coaches, high school coaches in Wisconsin, were in favor of it. So the WIAA and the Wisconsin Football Coaches Association went ahead and drew up the different divisions and put them out. And then it got voted down. Then the coaches started to look at matchups and the two big problem areas that have been seen are, number one, travel, and number two, the loss of traditional rivals. Well, you had 3 choices to vote, and I had a vote. One was I like it, the other one was I don't like it, and number 3 was I don't care. And I voted I didn't care. But I think the two negatives, there's some. I think it's kind of a red herring. The travel issue, you're only going to travel at most 4 times a year. And the travel distances, I mean, it is the state of Wisconsin. We're not in Wyoming or California, so the travel.
If I recall, maybe Superior was lumped in with some of the Division II schools in our area.
Yeah, they were thrown in there. And as I said, other sports, basketball travels like crazy.
In a 20-plus game schedule.
Right, exactly. The other one was the loss of traditional rivals. Well, I switched conferences during my career as a coach. We started out in the old CWCC, the Catholic School Conference, and everybody, there were traditional rivalries there. And then we got into the MVC, and it's surprising how fast the new rivalries become just like the old rivalries. So we can't keep, I think the WIA needs to make a decision on this. And I know they try to work with the conferences and try to get, some sort of unanimity among the conferences, but I think you're just looking at situations where schools are really kids, not even the schools, the kids are really put in unfair situations, and that's got to be our first priority.
Knowing what you know now, if this would mean a lower start date, maybe more mid-August, would you be in favor?
I would be. Again, when you look at July 31st as a start date, you try to run some sort of.
And football numbers have been good, but this is almost more of an excuse to give people not to go out for football.
Exactly. you'd like to run some sort of a summer program, and kids are really being tugged so many different ways. Everybody's trying to, if you're a multi-sport athlete, there's summer baseball, there's summer basketball, there's workout, now you're going to throw football in at an early start date. I think it needs to really be thought out and really have someone take a good look at it.
Also worth noting, Aquinas and Luther have both asked to be out of their current conferences and football only too.
They have, and
that's another problem that districts would solve.
That would automatically solve that. The problem was they can ask to get out, but the MVC for Aquinas and the Coughlin for Luther had to release them, and they had no interest in doing that.
The MVC has fought so hard just to get West Salem a few years back.
Right, so they didn't want to see that. The district system seems to me to solve lots of problems. But again, our first thought has to be with what's the best thing for the kids. That's why we were in this business.